Yo, it's your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew. We have our usual suspects of AD or Alpha Dean. We have Spigs18 or Anthony. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and follow us here on Twitch or subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a huge help to our channels. I forget what numbers we're at now, but we really appreciate all the support on getting us there, but we're trying to reach even greater heights. But Dean, what are we doing here today?
We've seen it more than once discussed, things being said here and there. So we're just going to say, talk about tonight's topic. Are there too many settings for Cypher System, or are there not enough? We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about the pros and cons and just have a nice laid back discussion tonight, and, see what we can come up with. And of course, we want participation from the chat. And without further ado, I'm going to throw the ball to Ant and let him take the first shot.
All right. So first off, welcome back to the CU. Happy to have you here. For you newcomers that are just joining us, welcome. With the Magnet Archives doing so well on BackerKit, and we mentioned this topic a few weeks ago, and a couple of people in chat thought it would be interesting. So let's explore this concept, right? Is too many settings bad for a universal system, a universal RPG system like Cypher System? And has Monte Cook Games put out too many settings in a short period of time? So let's talk about this, because I think this is very interesting topic to talk about, because for one, we all Cypher fans, so we constantly want more and more books, but is more and more always better? Is it going to hold your attention? So let's explore this idea, because this is really interesting. And I think the quickest way for us to do this, let's just break down all the settings or genres that they currently have available right now, right? So Al, you want to start going over some of the books that are the settings and genres that are currently out, and so that way we'll have a total number of how many genres and settings are out there already?
Yeah, I can write that down. We got reading voice on. So we got the official settings from Monte Cook Games for the Cypher System, and we have Numenera, The Strange, Gods of the Fall, Predation, Unmasked, Tullus, Path of the Planebreaker, and Old Gods of Appalachia. Then we move along to things that are their toolkits with mini settings or setting seeds in them, and those books would be The Stars Are Fire, which has the Revel, Stay Alive, which has Welcome to the Night, God Forsaken, which has, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, Bonthere, the Blessed Land. Bonthere, the Blessed Land. We Are All Mad Here with Heartwood, and Claim the Sky with Boundless. And moving along to things that are on the way, coming to us, a new setting book and toolkits coming would be the Magnus Archives, A Rust and Redemption, and It's Only Magic. And then we can move on to a tiny subsection of officially MCG licensed settings that use the Cypher System and are directly supported by MCG. And those would be Vert, Shotguns and Sorcery, Tidal Blades, and Diamond Throne. Quite a list there.
Yeah. So what's the total here? There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
That's 12. That's 12 full settings. Then you have the 5 Toolkit Books plus 2 more coming, which is 7, and of course the Magnus Archives, which is coming. So that's a grand total of 20 different settings available.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot. And that's actually more than once I read them out, I'm like, God damn, there is a lot of settings currently. Zeus Legion wrote, I wish the settings were organized better, different with different indications, graphic design, indicating that their Cypher settings are better characterized in the MCG store. I definitely agree with the MCG store. The way it sorts out is always a little wonky.
Yeah.
Like, you'd be able to break it down by settings.
Even when you do a search, it comes up kind of funky. So yeah. I do agree with that as well.
I can see them hopefully working on that a little bit now that, again, we've read how many setting and different books they have. And I don't think that number's gonna slow down anytime soon. So yeah, it would be cool to see them kind of rework the site to make it a little like Zeus Legion said, a little easier to sort or categorize or whatever have you. Yeah.
So what we're going to do next, I guess we're just going to list. We got a list of pros and a list of cons.
Hold on. Before we even rush to that, right? Let's. I didn't put this in the notes, but I think it's worth stating at the very beginning, and I apologize. But let's talk about the settings that are supported with more than one book, because I think that's very important. For the exception of you have Numenera, which has a ton of books and is greatly supported. The Strange has more than one book. Ptolus has more than one book. Path of the Planebreaker has more than one book. And that's about it, right?
I think
Tolus
that is
doesn't
it.
really, Tolus doesn't really have more than, well, Tolus just has some additional adventures, but there's only one
But that's
actual.
still support. That's
Yeah,
still
I
support.
guess. Yeah, I guess you can put it that way.
That's still support. So Can't Help will answer the title. No, roll credits. Good stream. Yeah, I think those are the only four that have more. I mean, not counting Shotguns and Sorcery and Vert. No, Vert doesn't have more than one book. Shotguns and Sorceries does. So Shotguns
Diamond, Diamond Throne has more than one book.
that ever gets in our heads.
Right.
I hate to throw shade, D, but that thing is killing me right now.
Brother, hey, you're not throwing me no shade. I didn't do it. I worked on it. I did my part. I did what I was supposed to do. I still reach out and try to figure out what the hell is going on and do the best I can.
I'm not going to you. I feel bad for you on the server because everybody be hammering it. You're like the only person, you're like the official spokesman on the server.
I know. I do my best, man. You know, I take it in stride.
Yeah, you be out there trying, but
I take it in stride. But here's the thing: at least there is someone able to say something. That's that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, but they have actually more than one product for Diamond Throne.
Right.
So it's those 6 that have more than one book worth of support. And unless I'm wrong, everything else on here has a singular book worth of support.
Yeah, they're self-contained. They're self-contained.
Oh no! Oh God has more than one book worth of support as well, right?
No, well, they have the player guides. That's not really. Yeah, it's just the one book.
I would say it's one book.
Yeah.
Even though there's the player guides, but it's basically the same information, just separated.
It's just, oh God. But
I guess before we even go to the pros and cons, let's just throw out the disclaimer. At no point are we saying that any of these products or any of these settings are not worth the initial purchase or they're not great settings. That's not what this conversation is about. I think that we all in agreement here that every one of these settings deserve a place in the MCG catalog, and they all worth playing and purchasing, and all that stuff as a GM or as a player. I think all these settings are phenomenal, and I enjoyed playing every single one of them. But the question still should be asked: Are these too many settings, and are they being supported enough? Which would be the better question.
Well, so we're going to get to the questions we're going to ask ourselves, but I think we should just run through like our pros and cons, and then answer the questions.
Cons or the pros first?
I'll do the cons. Let's do the cons. So the cons right now that we have written out for ourselves are, we just said it, some settings may not be supported enough mechanically with only one book. Some consumers may be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of.
About each con, don't just. I think this is a major con for the simple fact that, I can't speak specifically for every one of these settings, but certain settings like Predation jumps to mind immediately. Gods of the Fall jumps to mind immediately. Those are 2 settings that are so rich that you want additional mechanical elements added on, even if you can create them themselves. Because I hear Dean in my head saying, "Oh, you can make it," but that's not the point of why I'm having that discussion. Sometimes it's better to get the official MCG version, and it would be nice to see additional mechanics.
You like you said, you mentioned Gods of the Fall and Predation, but I say Unmasked as well. I think Unmasked is the one more so than Gods of the Fall and Predation, just because of what the setting is. I think that it definitely could use more support. It is a great setting. It has so much potential. It has. I've actually talked to other people about combining the idea of Unmasked with other things to do other things because it's that rich and that flexible and capable. So
I would also throw Stars of Fire in this mix of needing more mechanical, because there's a ton of like ship elements that could be added. There's a ton of different era of space travel. Like sci-fi has a ton of stuff that isn't covered in Stars of Fire. With one additional book, all that could
well,
all be
see, and as far as that's concerned, then I mean, I even look at I would say that for all of the toolkit books, because the toolkit books, not only do they have a lot of a lot of versatility, but the settings in those books are just seeds. They're not full of settings. They're not fully fleshed out. And all in every
the toolkit books are, in my opinion, the better route to go. But the only problem with including a micro setting in a toolkit book, you always get your fans hungry for more, and that usually isn't a problem unless if there is a follow up book. But when there isn't a follow up book, you know what I mean. You leave your fans just hungry. You know what I mean?
that's what I'm saying. When you think about the toolkit books, those settings, every last one of them, the five books that we have right now in front of us, those five minis are freaking they're immersive. You get drawn right in. I mean, you remember when we got Stay Alive? I read the Stay Alive book from cover to cover twice in the same night. It was crazy because it was that good. You
How
know,
you say something? I saw you raise your.
Yeah, just it's completely different tangent, but y'all keep going down the rabbit hole. But what I was gonna say was that not even new books, right? Like Zeus Legion said in chat, I haven't bought several of them, like Predation, Gods of the Fall, etc. Exactly because I know nothing about them and they're not marketed as well, and they seem to be abandoned because they aren't even kept up with new editions, right? Like the Cypher System 2.0, whatever CSR, and that is a super valid point. We don't even need to see new books like per se. If we got even revamped versions of like Gods of the Fall, Predation, those three old ones, get them more in line with the CSR, maybe add a couple things, that even would be amazing.
Yeah, that's a great point. What's another con, Dean?
next one that we had on the list was that some consumers just might be overwhelmed by the sheer amount of the settings, and not know where to begin. And and I agree there, but I also kind of feel like Manilu or Manialu or whatever. How I'm butchering your name. I'm sorry. Um, but they said in the chat that the more unsupported settings come out, it can feel a little discouraging because there has been nothing. They're not marketed. People don't know Unmasked or Predation or or Gods of the Fall. And because they're older and haven't been updated with the latest information, like you guys were saying, they could feel just forgotten about.
I have a curious question because, and this is an honest question because I feel like it's unfair to me in some aspect because I get everything and I purchase everything. I get all the MCG books, right? So I don't view it from the lens of I only have a certain amount of money to purchase one MCG book, right? Or two MCG books. am I gonna automatically go to the Numenera because I know that it's continuously supported? Or will I take a chance on the Gods of the Fall, knowing that there's only one book?
See, for me, I think that's a great question. And for me, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because, like you, I'm going to get everything anyway. But I know basically from how MCG does things, Numenera will probably be a great choice for a person for the simple fact there is so much support. But even in the sense of all the support, it's still kind of wide open for you to create as yet there is to be created within the world versus getting one of the setting books because once you kind of go through it you're really at your own behest to come up with more, whereas with all the support Numenera has you can draw inspiration from so many different sources. So even if you could only afford 2 or 3 books, you could have 2 or 3 books and that's just going to expand your your plethora of choice.
And I will say that Coffee Cup Cat in the chat made a good point in regards to this. For me, it's less a question of how many settings there are or how many books for each setting. It's more of a question of which premises really capture my imagination. And I am of this camp. If I'm very limited on funds, even if like a setting or book or whatever have you is only the one of it, if that like premise or whatever really grasps me, I'm more likely to grab it, even though I know there aren't any books because I'm of that camp. I could just make up more stuff. That's fine. I'm more than okay with that. But not everybody is like that.
Well, that was
Yeah.
kind of the point I make. I know myself. I love to create. I love that. But I also know, and I've said it on more than one occasion. Coming from the old school of gaming, I remember how when other stuff came out, for D&D or whatever, it was kind of like just you could take, you could take Waterdeep and drop it into your world, or you could have took the Greyhawk, Castle Greyhawk, and dropped it into your world, and that's kind of where Numenera shines because they have so much stuff that you can just drop in and it kind of fits, willy nilly, but it's a perfect fit. Whereas where you're saying now, and I agree again, I love to create. So if the setting is like the coolest shit yet, then man, it's like a catch 22. Do I want more stuff, or do I really want to play the setting that I really want to play?
Manalu brought up a great question as well. He goes, that's a great question. For me, as someone who only got into Cypher this year, I honestly felt lost. I ended up dropping a lot of money on books that even now I'm not sure I'll get any use out of. Interesting to read. Sure, I mean, interesting always, but I want the rules to run companions, for example. Do I have to get predation? That's a bad example because I don't have the context to create a better one. But I think you know what I mean. I absolutely know what you mean. Is you may not be interested in the setting, or the setting may like it may capture you for a little bit, but you don't feel like you're gonna get a full campaign out of it. But you want certain mechanics from those particular books, and do you have to get that book just for that mechanic? That's a great point.
And yeah, it is. And Algalith says the same. He said another con I'm noticing is a lot of types, descriptor, and foci and flavors end up being scattered across so many different books. And sometimes you can end up with a double up on some of these. Granted,
Oh,
this is a personal thing because I've recently gotten a whole bunch of Cypher books, but it's something that I wonder if it might be worth MCG doing sort of a character creation compendium book or something like that. I'm going to answer that like this. The one thing that I think we're missing though is they've kind of mitigated that situation by building the seesaw and building the CSRD. And with that being said, because now they're adding all the stuff from the splat books, all the toolkit books and stuff like that. Now, Numenera, of course, isn't in there because Numenera is its own thing. The Strange isn't there because it's kind of its own thing. But everything that's like Cypher related seems to be being added to the CSRD. So that is a single plus and maybe a negative too, because I don't think a lot of people know that the CSRD is out there, especially if you're just coming into the game.
Also, it's worth saying there is a ton of double up, but it's unavoidable when you're doing the style of the way that they design their setting books. Some of these foci and descriptors, you know, they especially with the standalone setting books, you know, that they want, you know, like some of the core foci and descriptors have to double up because they're important in multiple genres. So I understand why they do it, and I definitely understand their point because there is a lot of double up, and sometimes you feel like, oh man, like 30% of these descriptors are in the CSR anyway, but they're trying to make those games standalone games.
But yeah,
So
well,
I put them in there. Yeah.
and that's what I'm saying. If you look at the standalone books, and that's why I kind of push those to the side. Look at Old Gods of Appalachia. You look at Numenera. You look at The Strange. Magnus Archives is going to be an example of that. That you're going to see things that you see in the CSR. But if you look at the Toolkit books, the Toolkit books really don't double up. The Toolkit books, or if they do double up, what they're doing is they're actually giving you another lens to view that particular foci or whatever through in order to, you know, kind of get you in the habit of being able to see the power of reskinning and so on and so forth.
But it's definitely a con, Dean. You can't deny that.
No, I'm not saying it's a negative. I'm not saying it's not a negative.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, just like you were pointing out that it's kind of unavoidable. I'm also kind of trying to also mitigate why it's done, if you will.
Yeah, these are all great points everybody's putting out in chat. Do we have another con we could go over before we start getting into the pros? I think we have.
Yeah, some settings may require more lore beyond its first release. People who want more books for settings that they're interested in end up feeling forgotten as MCG pushes out new settings.
I mean, we kind of touched on that already. But yeah, just to reiterate, as of someone who's a huge fan of Predation and Gods of the Fall, you know, it does kind of feel like that stuff got forgotten. I mean, you know, they are releasing the new adventures in the coming stuff with Rust and Redemption. I know they hit those stretch goals or whatever, and we'll be getting new adventures. But like, a new adventure is like, it's not a whole like thing. It's just you know what I'm getting at. It would be nice to see an actual like a revamp or additional materials. Like, and I know for one, there's
adventures they can add additional lore though, so they're killing two birds with one stone. So at least with the release of these new adventures, they are capable of adding additional lore. And just two camps, right? I think there's some people that they just want lore. They want to know about the world. They want to know about the key characters and all that. And then there's some people that want more mechanics, more foci, more descriptors, more monsters. And those two different groups, even though they're walking the same path, don't necessarily always align. Right? With adventures, they can take care of the lore problem. If that makes any sense.
No, that's super valid. I honestly didn't consider that.
And that's what I mean. Like what Al was just saying. I mean, I can kind of jump on that bandwagon. Like when you talk about predation, you know, predation is one of those settings that, you know, they could do a book that's just about the factions in predation, which would expand upon everything, and that would be crazy because just that one little book alone. Let's just say they did a typical 200-page book about nothing but the factions, you know. And that's going to expand the world and how you view it in the whole nine immensely. Is going to give you, you know, months and maybe years of lore to build upon, you know. So I get it. The last two things we had on there, some people might experience FOMO, you know, fear of missing out on something, you know. And yeah, well, you know, both of us, you know, the lore, because every time I pick up a book, you know, for me it's just like, oh, how can I incorporate this? What can I do with this? Oh, it's more stuff, you know, it's inspirational, you know. And the last major thing that we have to talk about is it can get hella expensive.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big.
Go back to the FOMO one right quick. I think this is one of the ones that I experience is that I read every book, I love every book, but I don't necessarily have the time to play. Because not only are we mega MCG Cypher System fans, we love all the other games too. So sometimes you don't have the time, and unless you have like 15 to 16 hours a day to dedicate to role playing games, which most people don't. They have jobs and wives and children and just life in general, right? You don't have the time to play all these games. So is it better suited to concentrate on a couple of settings? I know as a consumer you could do that, but the fear of missing out in me wants to get every book and read every book and play every game. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like a catch-22.
Yeah, it really is. Like I said, it goes both ways because that's why I have all the books. That's why I've read all the books, and it's like crazy because I mean, and then sometimes this is probably gotta say is another con. Sometimes I start cross-referencing the books. I'm thinking I'm talking about Numenera, but I'm actually talking about something in the Strange book. So yeah, it can become a bit overwhelming. So, but those are the major.
Realistically, Dean and Al and Chat, can you guys honestly say you could play a campaign in every one of these settings?
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't play campaigns, so.
No, I mean, not campaign in your head. I mean, realistically, play a campaign in every one of these settings.
Absolutely. I know I could realistically do it. No, I could realistically do it.
I mean,
you coming on time for our streams?
That is a funny question for me personally because I'm always upfront about this with my energy levels. I run about 5 games a year, period. So yeah, there's no way I'm running a campaign in all these anytime soon. Even one shots, like it'll take me like 4 years to run a one shot for every one of these settings. Like considering my energy levels.
Now, if you're saying it from the perspective of having time, no, I don't have the time.
That's what I'm talking.
But you're saying, but I thought you were saying realistic. Could I see myself doing? Yeah, if I didn't have to go to work,
I'm doing it too. But realistically,
oh well, no. Look, until I'm a retired guy and I don't have to worry about 12-hour shifts, 14 days out of the month. Hell no. I mean, I haven't run a campaign. I've run mini campaigns. I'll set up storylines where I know I can run 6 sessions or 12 sessions to get a story. That's all I've done. I have yet to run a full ongoing campaign that's just because I don't have time.
And we said all these cons, and it's not to bash it because now we're going to talk about the pros. But before we go to the pros, I just want to ask, and Chat might know better, can you think of any other universal systems that uses this philosophy when it comes to settings and genres? The only one that I could think of off the top of my head that does like the one book is Evil Hat with Fate. Like they tend not to have more than one book. I was looking at Savage Worlds, but Savage Worlds tends to have more than one book for their genres, right? And the only one I could think of in the universe, GURPS tends to do more the toolkits as opposed to like genre books. Or unless I'm mistaken, but most of the GURPS books I have are more toolkit books. They're not necessarily like full-on settings.
Yeah, but, no, I don't think GURPS ever really did settings, but Fate actually does. Well, it depends on the genre because I know their superhero stuff has several books in Fate. But yeah, Savage Worlds is the other one, which is more of a universal system, but they do multiple. They normally do multiple books, and then that's kind of it. And then they have a couple of settings that they keep revisiting, like the like that horror, that Victorian horror setting they have. They'll revisit that. They revisit Deadlands a lot, but like other stuff.
Book has a ton of books.
But then there's like other stuff that I watched them do, like, they just did a Savage Worlds version of Battle Lords of the 23rd Century, and it's like 3 books, but I don't know if there's any more books coming.
And like another universal system was Palladium, but Palladium they cranked out a hell of a lot of books for each one of their settings. Like for the exception of like their horror settings, but everything else got more than one book support. So
But
yeah,
Palladium is
Fate,
crazy.
Fate and Cypher System are the only two I think that off the top of my head, I could be wrong, that do the one book, and then that's usually what you get is that one book.
Yeah.
Because all the other universal systems tend to support more than just
Well,
one.
you know what though? PBTA, they're another one who kind of do. They kind of another one who do like the 1 or 2 book, but then they come back and revisit it because like they just revisited Monster of the Week.
But you
And
think PBTA is a little different because they're different companies that make PBTA based games. So it makes sense that you have more than because they're not all being funneled by the same company. They're just using the same rule set. Right?
yeah, but I'm saying some of them
Dungeon World and what's that?
mass.
Yeah, those are 2 separate companies.
Got you.
You know what I mean?
But yeah,
Like,
because that's what I was saying. Like, I was just saying they just did another Kickstarter for Monster of the Week, and they put out Monster of the Week, and they also put out the Codex of Worlds. And then of course there's like Galaxies in Peril, Worlds in Peril, which is their superhero stuff. But it's again, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head though. The fact that I guess it's different companies, so they'll probably support their own idea using that engine.
yeah. But MCG is directly making these games.
Correct.
So it's a little bit different. Yeah, the only 2 I could think of is Fate and Cypher System. They use the one book format because I know some people mentioned in chat GURPS, but I haven't played GURPS in years. But I do remember GURPS being more like toolkits. Like it wouldn't even have a setting involved. It'll just be like modern weapons.
Yeah. GURPS put out a lot of toolkits. Palladium put out a lot of stuff. Oh, another one that did a lot of stuff too was Hero System.
For me.
What'd you say?
That was too crunchy for me.
Dude, after playing Phoenix,
This world is a Palladium setting. I stand corrected. I mean,
like after playing Phoenix Command, there's nothing that's crunchy.
All right, so let's get into the positives now. We dealt with some of the negatives. What are the pros to having multiple genres and settings? And not for nothing, we spent all that time talking about the negatives, but this is what makes us love Cypher System to begin with. So let's talk about the pros.
Hit us off, Al.
Yeah, I'll start us off. Oh, excuse me. And this is a pretty obvious one, but with so many setting books, you can appeal to a wider gaming audience as a gaming company, and everyone is bound to like one of the settings. And that's true. Like, no matter who we talk to, there's at least one of these settings or books or whatever that they would really enjoy. Yeah, that's definitely quite valid. It's like casting a wide net. You'll bound to catch more fish.
And this is absolutely true. And like CypherCon would be a perfect example of this. Like you may not like fantasy, but there was horror games, there was super games, because there's so many settings, there's so many different genres that they're capable of. They put books out to help you run that. It covers so many bases.
Right, and I agree. I agree 1,000% because when we think about CypherCon, I mean, we did have some things that were standouts, but I think that was because it was new.
Yeah.
Which was Old Gods. Everybody was clamoring to get a taste of Old Gods. So that stood out. But what was really cool was that we actually did have just about every genre you could think of represented at some point there or another during CypherCon. And it really worked out well because I don't think I heard anybody have any negativity about their experience. I had some new players who had never played before. I had some veterans, and there was just no negativity about their experience. They literally got what they were looking for. So that was awesome. And that is awesome.
I mean, I think that's a testament to how great the Cypher System line is. That's what a big con is, because they touch all the bases, right? So, like, if you coming from D&D, but you still want to play fantasy, they have several variations of fantasy that you could play immediately off the bat. You could play Tolus traditional fantasy. You could play Supers fantasy with Gods of the Fall. So it's like they hit everywhere. The second pro that I wanted to talk about, because I think this is the biggest pro for me, is it has a great amount of content for those people that like to homebrew.
Absolutely.
Most of us take these books and may love the settings, may never get to play them, but it's like what they were saying in chat. You can use a lot of the elements from these settings for your homebrew. Cypher System is a homebrewer's paradise when it comes to, not only can you mix a bunch of genres together because they have so many genres, and the rules are so interchangeable that you can use pretty much, you could take any two books, like we've shown multiple times. You could take any two books and use them together to create something new and fresh and interesting.
And another thing that I want to add on to that is it also allows you to kind of homebrew things that already exist. Like if you want to play an Aliens game, or if you want to play Power Rangers, or if you want to adapt a cool movie or a TV show that you've seen, that you enjoy, you can literally put that together with Cypher System without any major heavy lifting. I think that right there is also another testament to that flexibility that we're talking about, and the fact that there's multiple genres. It's easy to build those things in a very short amount of time. I mean, especially like just with us doing one shots, our resume of one shots is crazy, with the different things that have been, and how well they work
Not
is.
even us. The server's resume of one shots is ridiculous.
Well, I'm saying I'm not like I said. I wouldn't even. You talking when you add the server and it just gets it gets crazy. It gets stupid. I'm just saying. The three of us, the craziness that we've done, and then if you add the server in, it's just wow. It's amazing.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead. You're fine.
No, KedHub hit the nail on the head with his comment. He said Cypher is one of the easiest games to GM. Period. So getting a wide collection of tools for your toolbox just means you have a better workshop. Nail on the head.
Yeah.
What's the next pro?
A great amount of content. Oh no, that was that. We just did that one. A large variety of settings to choose from when deciding to start a game. So because you have that, again, like you were saying earlier, you may not want to play fantasy, or if you're burnt out on a particular genre, you can jump the shark and try something else, because there is something else out there, and it's no learning curve. It's just learning. It's just literally learning the lore of the setting you want to play, versus.
Cypher System has enough settings, right, that you could pull a group together and go, what do you want to play? And then just take the consensus from the group. Oh, I want to play sci-fi. I want to play horror. I want to play supers. I want to play traditional fantasy. And then narrow it down to say, okay, let's play a fantasy-based superhero game with some horror elements. And then you pick out these 3 genre books, and then you could pick a setting directly from one of these books and add the other 2 elements in with, the mechanics from those other books, or you can make up your own, amalgamation of those 3 settings into your own thing.
Bright Crazy Star said in the chat, he said, I feel it's all homebrew or none of it is. The rules are admittedly saying, GM, this is all optional in your purview. it's homebrew, to use the rules as written. And you know what? I'll agree and kind of disagree all at the same time, because the way I see the rules in Cypher System, I've said it on the server, I've said it on streams. I look at the rules as being built for the players, which set the GM free, but it's all circular because it sets you free as the GM. You have a tendency to kind of abide by what's set up. So you make these rulings, and you can just tell a great story. You guys can have a blast doing it. So I think it all goes together.
I think the last one I wrote in there is pretty much, we said it before, so let's skip that one. Okay, this is a good one. With so many genres covered with foci and abilities and descriptors, it allows players infinite options for character creation.
That is an awesome one. And what a great way that illustrates this, or a great thing that illustrates this, is a player will come to you and say, hey, I have this character idea. And even if they don't know like all the books, all the settings or whatever, you or whatever as a seasoned GM could be like, hey, it's so easy to make that character. We just take this, that, and this, boom, we have a character. But this kind of circles back to a con we had discussed, or what chat was discussing. This is a great time to bring it up again. It would be awesome to see MCG put out basically a character creation compendium that has all the options from all the books, instead of having to look through each of these books to gather these character options. It'd be awesome to just have them all in one place, regardless of the setting or whatever. It's just literally a book of a collection of the character options. And yeah, it is a great positive, but the con there is that you kind of have to look through a bunch of books to get all that information.
Well, that's why I went back to saying that now you kind of do have it with the CSRD.
I mean, it's getting there. It's getting there, but it's not completely there.
With the exception,
I would say two things just from a company thing. It would be hard for them to do that and not get you to be able to purchase some of the books if all the really cool things are compiled in one place. Then what's going to make you want to purchase, especially the Toolkit books? What's going to make you want to purchase the Toolkit books if all the cool foci and descriptors are in one place for free? You know what I mean?
That is valid. I don't have a retort.
MCG even further, that's a problem that all universal systems have.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's not an MCG con. That's a universal system con.
And here's something else, though. I guess you can call it I say it's a con and a pro all at the same time, and we're seeing it right now with the Magnus Archives. It's a pro and a con at the same time because it's a universal system, and the way Cypher, especially like one like Cypher, because of its flexibility and mutability, you have a tendency to see how you can manipulate this particular rule or this particular mechanic to do something else. And now Monty's literally taking, Cypher and doing something unique that isn't even in the Cypher System rulebook with Magnus Archives. So now, for those of us like you and me and Al, now we're gonna be like, damn, I got to get my hands on this. And then you start seeing how you could apply these new ideas to, other stuff. So that's like a pro and a con all at the same time, rolled up into one.
Can't help that Pathfinder does it, but also I wonder if Pathfinder's yearly revenue, I'm pretty sure Pathfinder's yearly revenue is a lot more than MCG's. So that's kind of I'm not sure if they're in the same tax bracket. I could be wrong, but I'm not sure if those two companies generate the same revenue.
No, think about it, Anthony. If you look at it with the CSRD, they're literally taking all the toolkit information and they're making it available with, within the month. The only thing that's not available are the Strange, Numenera, Tullus. Those things aren't being put there, but everything else
is being put there for I understand what you're saying, but he's saying that Pathfinder does 100% everything for free, but they also don't make the same amount. They don't generate the same amount of revenue.
Right. No, I get that. I'm saying, but see, you got to think about it. Pathfinder is just Pathfinder. There is no Magnus Archive. Pathfinder's, and technically Pathfinder is also not a universal system. You know,
Yeah, I mean, we could definitely disagree on this, Kenneth, because you like, since they were an itty bitty company, I will argue that they went from being a nobody company to the second biggest RPG company in the world in less than a year. So I don't think they ever were categorized as an itty bitty company.
No, Paizo literally, Paizo's the only company to ever beat
We can
D&D.
definitely argue that point. Yeah, I'm not sure if they were ever an itty bitty company.
No, they were small when they first started, when we got the first Pathfinder. But Pathfinder, Paizo, when they took the throne from D&D and made Fifth Edition have to happen, yeah, they changed the dynamic of who they were and how they operate out here.
No, I'm not disagreeing with the point though. That would be, you could definitely do that. I'm not disagreeing with that point. I'm just saying, just some companies can't financially take that hit initially to build their business, to build their revenue and other sources. I'm just not sure MCG has enough revenue in the bank to be able to do that immediately and not take a financial hit. That's all I was trying to say. Not trying to poo-poo on the idea. I'm just saying that that might not be the best business decision.
No, it's definitely valid. Sorry, I don't really have much to add to this, but I want to read this before it gets lost or forgotten because it's a great positive that we didn't have in our list, and it's a super cool one. Zeus Legion said in the chat, although they're not really ready for it, being a small company, MCG now has a lot of IP they can expand into other media, comics, video games, shows, etc. That's more pro for them, but eventually for us too. And yeah, that's super valid. Like, I know we got the really only game we have is the Tides of Numenera, and then there was this very short, like little I think it was a 3D animation someone did about Numenera. But it would be awesome to see them expand into other stuff because yeah, I would be so down to read a Gods of the Fall comic like with some really good art and a nice story that follows like a group of gods trying to restore the world. That would be awesome.
Well, like I said, if you go back and get your hands on it, I have the Tolus comic books, and again, that was another foray, and you're absolutely right.
The tallest comic books were before MCG, though.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying that it's been done, and the fact that now they're in a position that they are making enough revenue, and like Zeus Legion and Al are both saying that would be like freaking phenomenal. I mean, could you imagine even if they did like a
No, I don't think
huh?
it's for lack of trying. I know Charles has mentioned several times that they'll love to get a show or some sort of television on other media. It's also
Yeah.
getting other companies to want to
But
invest.
well, it's a double. We got to think about that, guys. It's a double-edged sword because yeah, they would probably, like Charles said, yeah, they would love to get there, but again, you know, the MCG isn't the ones who necessarily are going to want to produce it. I mean, they might want to be producers on it, but not necessarily the actual writers and directors. And do they have time for that?
Well, the more importantly, not even writers and directors, the financiers, the producers to be able to pay for something like that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, they could. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that they could probably do the same thing that Critical Role did to produce Vox Machina.
I could be wrong, but from what I read, that was like $22 million to produce that first season.
Well, no, you got to remember, no. Listen to what I'm saying. Well, it was $22 million to do it. But what happened was they raised the initial money and got the hype up. But they didn't raise $22 million on the Kickstarter.
The Kickstarter did over 10. Let me see.
Let's see. But
Yeah, this is outside my scope of knowledge, so I'm gonna let y'all search it.
No, we're Googling it Let's see how much they raised.
Look at these guys. These guys are always
Oh,
talking about don't pause the
They
game to
raised
look
11
stuff up,
million.
and then they pause the stream to look something up. No, I'm
They
kidding.
raised 11 million, Bean.
Right. Okay, but that's what I'm saying. They raised 11 million, but what ended up happening was they took that and they put together their initial pitch, and then here came Amazon, the billion-dollar company, and they just kind of ran with it,
I mean,
and
that's
that's what I'm saying.
what they're trying to make. It's not from lack of trying.
Oh no,
They-
no, I'm not saying that it is. I'm not even saying. I'm saying if MCG, you know, if they did something like that with Numenera, and let's just say they raised, $3 million to do a Numenera animated show or TV show or whatever, and
This has
pitched it
nothing to
to,
do with our topic, but yes, we want them to expand.
huh?
I said yes. We're going down a serious rabbit hole. We want them to expand. The only point I was trying to make is it would be cool, but it's not like they don't want it to make it. It's not. It's out of their hand
Right.
financially. In order for that was the only point I was trying to make. It's not like they could just turn around and say we're gonna make a Numenera show. They don't have the bread for that.
Well, no, no, and
They allocated all their money and said we're not making any books or games
right.
for
I get what you're saying. I know, and I get that part. Derek Cage says, I'm saying, for instance, as a setting, what makes it strange unique from another dimensional hop other than the Cypher system? Um, Actually, there's probably a lot of things about it because the lore for the Strange is unique unto itself. It's, Bruce Cordell wrote an entire book. You have to, read Myth of the Maker, and you'll find all the unique ideas that are solely his. Yeah, we've seen them before. We've seen variants of them before, but it is still his. You know and they have a unique ideology on how you're actually traveling through the dimensions and what you're actually traveling through. Unlike Stargate, where Stargate says, "Oh, guess what? We have a gate and it opens points between two stars, and you need another gate to do that." No, the Strange is saying there's a dark energy network, and it does this and it does that. So there's a ton of information to make it unique and make it cool. It just depends. Like Anthony said, it's really about the money.
Mhm. What you call it is that's definitely a fair point, but you can say that about most genres comparing one setting to another setting and say that one makes it exactly different.
Exactly.
Yeah. I personally think The Strange was the perfect route to go. It was supported just enough to keep you, the I'm not asking for a million books, but the way The Strange did it, where they had like 2 or 3 additional books, was like the perfect happy medium. All right, so we have some more cons. I mean, more
More
pros.
pros.
Yeah.
Well,
We didn't even touch the character creation part because Dean went into his tangent on making a Numenera movie.
I mean, I kind of brought up the tangent, but yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, character creation is a huge pro because you have so many different books to draw from a reference for character creation. So, you could make the non-traditional fantasy character in a fantasy game. You can make the non-traditional supers character in a supers game. You can make because you have so many different options. To
and
go
I'll
back,
say another, and I'll jump on the bandwagon with a plus to that as well, because there is so much. You can also kind of drill it down to be exactly what it is you're looking for, but still give your players enough options to feel like they get to do what they want as well. I
yeah,
think it works both ways.
yeah. I think character creation in Cypher System is one of the most enjoyable things to do within the system.
You
I
know,
just have a good time making characters. It's always fun.
Character creation has always been important to me in any game, but yeah, Cypher's character creation process is absolutely fun. I mean, I like making characters themselves. I even like fooling around and modifying the types,
Yeah.
to make the type fit the genre.
And that can be said for a lot of systems. Some systems are fun to play, but are a slog to create a character.
Yes. I mean, I like to tell the story. I had 6 people sit at a table for a demo, and everybody wanted to learn about character creation. And it literally took me 1 hour to make 6 characters. I could not have done that with D&D.
Mhm.
I don't know another game that I could have really done that with. Making 6 unique characters, and everybody was happy at the end of the character creation. You know, and no, can't have riffs. No, 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 no. Riffs, we would be here for 2 days.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
mentioning that as the counterpoint.
I know exactly.
But yeah, character creation in Cypher System really is so splendid because of the variety we're given with all these books and whatnot. And yeah, it's super fun to be able to interject, like Anthony was saying, like some supers into your sci-fi or some horror into your whatever. Like it's such a good thing.
Oh
Um,
yeah, Traveler, you could die character creation. That happened to me multiple times. All
Mhm.
right, so we have another pro we want to talk to.
well, I wanted to talk to this one because Ray Crazy Star made it. He said the ordeal for me is finding a way to make character creation approachable for new people. There are tens of thousands of ways to make a warrior. What I do, real easy, and because Cypher allows for it, you can make a simplified or consolidated list of things that are available, ask people what they want, and you show them right there in that moment. Well, listen, you know, you are a tough warrior who masters weapons, but you want a magical flares. You want a sword, so you can give them a couple of little magical flavors to go along with it or something. You want to play the classic fighter magic user. You just kind of consolidate a list and present it. That's kind of how I see it, and I help my players by showing them that each one of those things, that adjective, that verb, and that noun all give you something to work with it. You
Yeah,
know,
group said choice paralysis. Ken Up said choice paralysis becomes an issue. That's a pro and a con. I love the fact that you can have a party of all the same type and be 5 or 6
completely different.
characters, but that choice could also bring paralysis for the player. So it's like what you said, if you narrow it down, and focus on what's the concept of the player wants to come across, and give them just those options. Like say
Right,
somebody says, I want to be a warrior that is virtuous, almost almost like a cleric or something like that, and just give them the foci that specifically, like deal with that, instead of saying, "Here, look at all these foci to pick from." You know what I mean?
right, and that's just literally what I'm saying. I talk to the people, and then I will direct them, like you said, just give them a focus and give them a type and let them go with that. And then you know what? After a few sessions, if we end up know we're going to play more, okay, do you want to stick with this character? Are you enjoying this, or do you really want to make your own this time? Once they become versed and feel a little bit, open about it, you can get past that choice paralysis.
Mm. All right, let's do two more pros, and then we'll definitely answer your question by Crazy Star. So the next pro I have is makes it super easy for genre mashups and to recreate films or books for cool, interesting one shots. We one shot guys, and I'm a firm believer that you could take any film, and with the current books that are now available in Cypher System, you could pretty much recreate most films, or pretty much any film, and have enough mechanics and character types to create a pretty cool version in a one shot form.
Well, and I'm gonna jump on that and say this. You're right, because Anthony, to this day, I'm giving you your props, because your when you did John Carpenter's The Thing and Walter Hill's The Warriors, those two, I felt like I was right there in the movie. I got that same feeling like I did as, in '84, sitting there watching The Thing. It was freaking great, you know. And I got to say the same thing to you, Al, because when you did the Darkest Dungeon as a video game, you brought that tension. You brought that, it's so cool. you know. So I think that is one of the best things that you pointed out, and about how it's so easy to bring forth those things, you know. Um, I've
Yeah,
done tons of
everybody in the chat was saying with the new books, especially with the new books, and I just typed in, yeah, I see some Mad Max in my future.
man, like, well, listen, you read the you got the adventure book and Bitter Seeds, which is
Yeah,
from Rust and Redemption. That's nothing but a Mad Max adventure.
yeah,
It's like crazy. It's so good, you know.
yeah.
Um,
And we all three of us are big one shot guys, so I that's definitely a pro for me. You know what I mean? Cypher System is you can recreate most books and films. And you want to do a fun, interesting one shot with the friends, or on the post something kooky and cool. You definitely have enough resources to do that.
right. Absolutely.
And the last one, who wrote this? Dean, was that Dean? You wrote this last
Yeah.
show?
It's a good
It,
one.
it,
Yeah,
it basically shows the power and flexibility of the Cypher system as a universal game system or engine. You know, it is, to me, by far my favorite
mine too.
universal system I've ever touched. You know, and I've been gaming since 1977. I've touched a whole lot of stuff. This by far is the best, because to me it has just enough mechanics and rules and so on and so forth to keep the structure, but it gets out of the way. It gets out of the way of the storytelling. And I think that's what makes me so happy about it.
I
And
couldn't
well,
agree more. That's all I have to say. I
yeah,
couldn't agree with the statement more. That is absolutely 100% what I feel.
yeah, it's awesome because a lot of the times people will say, or we see a lot of people say, "Hey, Cipher System doesn't handle X well," and then you can literally sit down and explain to them, "Hey, have you thought about doing it this way?" And a lot of people are like, "Whoa, I didn't actually think about that." Yeah, and the fact that we can actually now, with 20 different settings, or mini settings, or whatever you want to say, books, we can actually point to literal official books like, hey, Cypher System can't do horror well, look at Stay Alive. Oh, Cypher System can't do supers well, look at Claim the Sky. Like, we can literally point to books and say, hey, this is how you do that.
I'll give you the perfect example of exactly what you said. A couple years ago, there was a huge discussion about Star Wars on the server, and about how Cypher would handle Star Wars and what to do. And my initial response was, "What do you mean? Like, there's nothing in Star Wars that's Cypher
Yeah, I'm
System.
Cypher.
You want droids? Use the companion rules from Predation. You want to capture the feel of Jedi's, and use the optional magic rules to give and the power stunts
Power
and
shifts. Yeah.
from the Cypher Core book to capture Jedi feel."
Or
And
just use your character options from Gods of the Fall.
yeah,
You
and
know?
I was like, like, there is nothing that you can't. The difference is that it takes a little bit. I don't want to say creativity, because that's not the right word, but let's just say it takes rolling up your sleeves and coming up with rulings over rules to hammer it out. But we did Star Wars no problem, and we covered everybody. You know
Yep.
what I mean?
We
So
had Wookiees, we had droids, we had everything as players and so on and so forth.
it took a little thinking beforehand, maybe a little like upfront work, but with Cypher System and a little upfront work, you could cover almost any genre.
I want to answer Bright Crazy Stars question. They said, "How do you get better at making a curated list and not make players feel like you are cutting off options? I cannot yet really speed through all of the CSR options." So here's the thing, Bright Crazy Star. There's two ways to go about it. There is no great way of making a curated list. look at it through the lens of what world you're building, and you pick the things that make sense to you. Now, if you are playing with people who are versed in Cypher, why don't you have a session 0 and discuss with your players? Do a collective world building. And that way you build your curated list and nobody feels like they're being left out because their ideas are being heard. You can weigh them, until you get comfortable building your own worlds. I think that's just like a really easy way to handle that. You guys got anything to add to that?
I will also say too is build your list out exactly what Dean said. Pick the foci that you think make the most sense for your world, but also be flexible enough to allow the players to at least bargain with you if they have something that isn't on the list, and let them explain to you why it makes sense for it to be in your world. Because if they give you a logical reason why it makes sense, just add it onto your list. Just because you create a list doesn't make it final that nothing could ever be added or subtracted from the list. You know what I mean? So
And
you can always adjust the list.
flexibility. Remember that magic word. You're in with Cypher, you don't have to do the heavy lifting alone. And the other cool part about that too is if you involve your players, like Anthony is saying, if you involve the players, they have an investment as well. So that's a like a give back to you as a GM, and it should boost your ideas as well, because now you're seeing things from different perspectives.
So I think there's more pros than cons, and I knew we were going to feel this at the end of this discussion because we were all pro. Bring on as many comic books as you possibly can. But like I said, it was just good for us to verbalize this discussion out loud with chat, so we could actually see what are some of the pros and what are some of the cons, and like make an informed decision. But I think at the end of the day, I'm definitely no, Cypher System does not have too many setting books. I'm in that camp for sure.
Oh yeah. So let's just ask like this one last question here, Anthony. You and Al.
We have a ton of questions to ask.
I know, but I was okay. Well, go ahead. Let's start them.
All right. So the first question was, does MCG have too many settings? I'm in the camp of no. Bring on the more settings as they possibly can.
Agreed.
Same.
I agree.
All right, and chat as well. We want you guys to be involved in this discussion. Here's another. This is a really good question. If MCG could change anything with its release schedule, what would it be?
Honestly, because of everything we're talking about, I think what could be a cool thing is if they just decided to go, you know what, this year we're going to focus on this particular setting, and we're going to and the Kickstarters that they do, would be related to that, to give people more, since people want more in stuff that's already existent, and maybe do at least one Kickstarter out of the year for something that already exists, and then the next one will be for something new.
My suggestion would be I would like, which is a little more reasonable, I think, is one adventure book a year that touches 4 or 5 different settings. So they can still do everything that they plan on their Kickstarters, but every year release an adventure book that touches 4 or 5 of their existing settings. And every year it could be 4 or 5 different ones.
Oh, that could be cool too. What setting do you think really needs additional support?
Gods of the Fall.
Predation.
Unmasked.
Yeah, literally all 3 of the original setting books, yeah.
We would be mad with all 3 of those. Chat, which one do you think needs the most support? It's funny, we all were, and it's funny because Not really. Dean always liked unmasked, but me and Al were more flip flop. I've run more Gods of the Fall than I have Predation, and I'm pretty sure Al's run more Predation than he has Gods of the Fall.
Correct. But I am starting to, not starting to, I love it a lot now after actually sitting down and, running it. I never ran it really too much before doing my one shots outside of playing in your game. But, now that I'm actually in it and played it and, read it more, I would love to see more Gods of the Fall stuff.
You know what?
It's bringing up the Origin as something that needs more support. That's actually
Bring that book makes me so happy. Oh my God. Like I said, for me, I have to honestly, I told Bruce on the show, remember, it's the first setting I've ever picked up out of the box, however you want to put it.
play that setting. You see, there's too many settings. You can't play
But you know
everything.
what's crazy is I've only gotten to run the one shots with that. I've only got to run Night at the Opera, and I've run it quite a few times. I would love to run the Origin. Absolutely love to run it.
Derek, both Gods of Predation are absolutely phenomenal settings, and you should try to play both of them at least once because they both freaking awesome. The next question I have is, what setting beyond what they already have do you think MCG needs to make? We always ask this question.
I already touched on it in chat. Magical Girl. I know you can just reskin Unmasked, but I would love to see something official. Maybe they'll touch on it in what is it's only Magic, or I'm so bad. What's the other? It's Rust and Redemption, and what's the other book?
It's only Magic.
I was right. I was actually right. Maybe they might touch on it in there. Would be cool to see, but we'll see.
Personally, I would like to see a pulp, the pulp era style book, something that like leaned into, that old, Sky Captain in the World of Tomorrow and Indiana Jones type, adventure, the old mystery men, steampunk stuff. That genre is just so freaking awesome to me.
I originally would have said post-apocalyptic, but that's coming. I'm gonna kind of jump on Al's idea. But to go with the toolkit version, I would be happy with an anime book that touched multiple different anime genres in one book, like how they did with horror. It might not be as in depth for magical girls like Al wants, but I'm not a anime expert either, so they could give me all the different animes, in one book, or martial art.
That's mine.
The anime trope book would be awesome, actually. Like if it touches on all the different kinds, because there's just so many different subsets of anime that they could tackle, and yeah, that would be an awesome book to see actually as a toolkit book.
That would be a hella toolkit book.
Yeah.
And Bright Crazy Star said daggers, cloaks, mirrors, and smoke. Noir for real. Yeah, a noir book would be awesome.
All right. If MCG only concentrated on one setting going forward, which one would you want them to choose?
Gods of Fall.
I'm gonna have to say Numenera because it's their best rich.
But because they already kind of focus on Numenera, I'm gonna say something that's probably gonna surprise you. It's strange. Why not? I mean, I really think the only reason they don't do anything with the Strange is because they did build the Cypher System.
Yeah.
Because if you really look at the Strange, it's really nothing but the Cypher System with a built-in lore.
So chat, a bunch of chat, Coffee Cup Cat said the Strange is all the settings at once. That's facts. Love Numenera. Zeus Legion wrote love Numenera, but there's no way 8 could choose just one.
Assuming that was supposed to be an I.
I could choose just one. Yeah, I would just think that Numenera because it'll make them the most money.
I mean, Numenera is the obvious choice / answer, but like Gods of the Fall though.
And see, that's why I said the reason why I didn't even say Numenera is because Numenera is kind of what they do focus on. I mean, come on, when they did the weird, what did they do? We're getting a whole nother Numenera setting with the Glimmering Valley. They always come back to Numenera, you know. So, but that's just me.
What's your overall opinion on this topic? This one is straightforward.
Overall opinion would be I think we have I think if they never put out another product, there's enough settings out there to do whatever you want. But please continue more, more, more.
Yeah, my overall opinion is I want more settings, I want more books, I want more and more and more. I'm greedy. Give me everything you possibly can. I understand the overload of information, but freak it, overload me. I want everything.
And go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I know it's difficult for people just coming into Cypher System, where Ant and I have Ant and Al have kind of been there from the beginning, so I kind of read the books as they come out, but I still have to go back and read them again, you know. So I would just tell people if you're coming in and you're like us and you like all the books, get them in small chunks, that way you can read them and you don't feel like, something sitting on the shelf being untouched. Get them in small doses, use them, and then get some more.
And for me, it's what you call it. I would love to see them go back and chill off a little bit on new stuff. Like I know it's awesome to see the Magnus archives, old god, blah blah blah. It's all fantastic, and it really is. I'm super excited about what is the Magnus archives, but it would be awesome if they took a year or maybe 2 years, whatever, maybe a year on like new stuff and then a year they switch back to touching on some of the old stuff, because again, not only would it of course we would love to see new books for these old settings. But even if they just went back and started with like I said earlier, revamping them, making them more suited to the CSR or whatever, having more in line with the new stuff they've put out, maybe a touch drop two here or there of new stuff within these new revamped versions. But essentially, like again, maybe a year they work on new stuff, and then next year they go back and we get a Predation book or two, we get a Gods of the Fall book or whatever. It just would be nice to see more love for these older things. And it was said earlier in the chat, like when new consumers come in and they see that there's no additional books for the thing, it kind of is a little off-putting. Like they don't feel the need or want to grab it because it's just the one book. But I will say this though, all that aside, pick up Gods of the Fall if you don't have it. It is so good. And it's super easy to make it more in line with CSR. But yeah, that is my final say.
Oh, MCG does listen to our videos. It does watch our stuff. So whatever we say in here and whatever you guys are saying in chat, we'll get to them. So you never know. We might get lucky and stuff like that happen. Look what you guys just everybody's been clamoring for a re-release of Invisible Sun, and they just announced today that they're printing another version of Invisible Sun. And that was a topic that we've talked about multiple times, that we feared there'll never be another physical printing of Invisible Sun. And look, MCG heard everyone, and
it's crazy because it's crazy when you think about it too. And I'm gonna say this to anybody out there who don't know it. The Invisible Sun is a premium. They call it a premium gaming experience. It is expensive. That cube is like $250, and they've done 2 printings and they sell out every time. That's why they're getting ready to do another run, which is crazy when you think about it.
Almost over a year, maybe 2 years since they've done
almost 2 years, I think, since the last Invisible Sun. But they sell out. It's really a great product. As a whole. A lot of people got a lot of issues when it comes to this about the system or that. But again, if you shift your paradigm and kind of just embrace the whole idea that MCG is predicated on the idea of flexibility, ingenuity, and your own creativeness, you'll be happy. you'll be more than happy.
Yeah, I just want to chime in real fast because bonkers fact was just brought up because I mentioned go buy Gods of the Fall, and Kesrick in chat said they looked it up and it's out of print. You cannot get the physical one anymore. It's only PDF. What? For Gods of the Fall? What? They don't print them anymore?
No. It's not that they don't print them anymore. They've sold out. They're just sold out.
No. It says out of print. Out of print means they're not printing it anymore. No.
No, I think it just means they don't have any. Because
we can also ask MCG later, but we can move on. But that's wild if it's out of print. If how I'm thinking of it.
At Gen Con.
Dean, usually if it's out of print is they don't print it. Out of stock means they don't have any more.
Correct.
Well, I know they sold out of them at Gen Con.
Yeah, that's what they say. Out of stock is not the same as out of print.
That's insane to me. That's wild. I mean, I guess I understand, but whew, that is not what is it? Great news for seeing new stuff. I mean, it could also be they're revamping the books. That could be foreshadowing for that, maybe.
I mean, first of all, Gods of the Fall is a classic MCG setting. I can't see them not reprinting that.
Well, like I said, when they had some at Gen Con. And
Gods of the Fall?
Yes. And at Gen Con, I watched literally the only thing they really took back after Gen Con was they had Old Gods of Appalachia books left. They had some Tolis 5e books left. And they had a few Path of the Planebreaker. Everything else sold out.
Chat, I am gonna ask Charles right now if it's true that.
Well, either way, we're getting sidetracked. I think we kind of wrap it up. That was just shocking to see. Like, I had to bring that up. But yeah, I think we've hit the nail on the head for this topic. It's wonderful to see all the settings that they have, and we would love to see more settings. But come on, just at least spend a year working on the older titles. Like, it's out of print now. We need the revamp more than ever.
Yeah. Just so you guys know, some CU lore. We said this multiple times, but Gods of the Fall is the game where me and Al met Dean playing. So it holds a special place in our heart.
A very special place in all of our hearts.
That's the very first game we ever played with Dean was Gods of the Fall. So, that's going to always hold a special place in CU lore. So,
guess I got to get mine signed.
That was the beginning. That was the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and you guys becoming like my brothers. You guys are my brothers, and that was 5 years ago. That was 5 years ago, and it's been a great ride, man. And I can't wait to see what the next 5 years brings us.
So, if you like us and you like what we do, join the Cypher Unlimited Discord server for all things Monte Cook Games. We have the largest fan-run Discord server for everything MCG, play games, chat about games, BS with us. That's the place to be. If Discord's not for you, join our Facebook group. It's not as big as our Discord, but there's still great conversations being had there daily. Or give us a follow or subscribe here on Twitch. It'd be greatly appreciated. We're always trying to bring our numbers up. Or go to our YouTube channel and like, share, subscribe there. We really trying to bring up our YouTube numbers. So please, if you can help us out, go to YouTube or visit our online store and pick up some cool Cypher Unlimited merch, like the shirt Dean got on or the CypherCon shirt I got on. I'm not sure how long the CypherCon shirts are going to be available for, so pick them up while it lasts. Give us a little donation on Ko-fi. It helps us out with little things like our giveaways and all the other good stuff we have planned. And last but not least, we love you guys.
Any final words, Dean?
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
I'm kind of shocked with you, Al.
All right, so thank you guys so much for stopping by. This was a blast of a talk. Hopefully MCG will have their ears out and give us those revamps, because I didn't really think about it before this talk, but it would be awesome to see those. And yeah, as usual, from us at the CU, we will see you later.